Hey y'all, I was evaluated the other day and I thought I would share the lesson that I did with you guys. I'm sharing it with you not having had my post evaluation, so I don't actually know if this is a great lesson or not. But I enjoyed teaching it. The kids responded well. My admin seemed to be enjoying it, so I thought I would share. So, as you all know, when you're being evaluated, there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through, a lot of boxes you've got to tick, and a lot of very specific vocabulary you have to use, which for us, art teachers, it feels very foreign simply because that evaluation process was not written for the likes of us. But I digress. So I decided to do the 100 color challenge. This is not a lesson that I invented. I just happened to remember it when I was coming up with my lesson plan for my evaluation. It tied in or ties in really well with what my kids are currently working on, so I decided to give it a go. So just a little backing up. Currently, my fourth grade students, along with all of the kids in the school, are creating sculptures of art supplies for our end of the year art show. Our end of the year art show will be an installation where we're going to transform the art room into an art supply store. This is all inspired by the artist Lucy Sparrow. I've recently shared on my blog and YouTube 2 projects that we're doing, and I'll be sharing many, many more. My fourth graders and my first graders, some of those classes are creating three-dimensional pencils. Some of them are creating three-dimensional crayon sculptures. And this particular class that I was evaluated with had just finished making the three-dimensional paint tubes, which you can find that video on my channel. So their next step is to come up with their own unique color for their paint tube. So with that in mind, I told them that we would be pushing the pause button on our sculpture project to do a brand new lesson. So my principal was already seated in my room, and I greeted my students at the door, and I have doubled up fourth grade classes. So there were 2 classes standing there waiting for me, and I said, guys, as you walk in the room, somebody is going to stand here at the door and hand you a piece of paper. This piece of paper has 7 questions at the top, a horizontal line, and 7 questions at the bottom. You are to answer, gosh, those nails are quite lovely. You are to answer the first 7 questions. Please enter the room at level 0. In my world, that means silently. Answer the first 7 questions. I will set my timer for 3 minutes. When the timer goes off, whether you are finished with your paper or not, please put it in your table caddy and meet me on the floor. This, my friends, is my answer to a pre-assessment. I'm going to be really honest. I don't do pre-assessments with my students that usually look like the written form. If anything, because it's art class, if we're going to do a self-portrait, sometimes, if I have time, I will do a pre-assessment to see where they are skill set-wise when it comes to drawing something like a self-portrait or a portrait of their family or even a landscape. However, being that I was evaluated, I knew that I would have to have some sort of pre and post evaluation, so this was my answer. So my students filed in silently, praise the Lord, since I'm being evaluated, and they took their seats. I set the timer for 3 minutes. Some of them, when they finished early, they put it in their caddy and they went and sat down on the floor with me. Those of them that weren't quite done yet, when the timer went off, they just put it away and sat on the floor. So, this was really enlightening for me to see. It made me realize, gee, perhaps I should be doing some pre-assessment, because while most of them knew the answers, I mean, I've got what 2 colors make purple, blue, and violet. Obviously, we need to talk. So after the kids sat with me on the floor, I shared with them several slides of artwork by street artists that were very bold, bright, and colorful. And since color was on their mind, having just taken that little, I don't want to call it a quiz, but let's be honest, that's what it is, I asked them, what do these works of art have in common? A lot of them said, well, it's graffiti, it's painted on the side of buildings, it's very bold, bright, and colorful. Bingo. Let's talk about color. So then I went to my next slide in my keynote presentation, which just featured the primary colors. And I asked them, okay, so what are these? Now, the whole point of this part of my lesson while being evaluated was that I really don't do the best job usually of questioning. When I get my scores back during my post-evaluation, like most art teachers, I'm assuming, I have trouble with questioning because you know what it's like when you have your kids in the room. You want to say, this is what we're doing today. If you're teaching them how to sculpt something, this is how we're going to go about sculpting it. Go do it. There's not a lot of open-ended questions, at least not in my lesson. So this portion of my lesson, I was really questioning, and it was great because then I could also see how much they knew about color. So the first slide showed a color wheel with just the primary colors. We talked about those and why they're so important. The next slide showed the next phase of the color wheel with the secondary colors, and we talked about how to read the color wheel, how when you look at a color wheel, you can see where a secondary color is and the two colors beside it. That's the recipe to making that secondary color. The next slide shared the tertiary colors, which was a new vocabulary word for them. And then the final slide was showing them tints and shades. And that's when I said to them, okay, guys, your challenge today, and this is when you got to really ramp it up and make it sound so exciting, is you are going to need to mix 100 unique colors. And they were like, say what now, Stevens? And some were really excited, and some were like, how are we going to do that? So then I began to explain to them what they would need to go shopping for at the store. That's what I call supply gathering. And these are the things that I had them go get. I had them grab a deli sheet. Wax paper would work. This is what they used for their palette, for mixing their colors on. They had to get a 100 color challenge sheet. To create this sheet, all I did was I looked up a grid online. I just Googled grid of 100 squares, enlarged that to fit my paper, and then just typed up this little bit of information at the top using the primary colors, white and black. Let's see how many colors you can create. They also had to get an index card because the color that they create, the one that they like the best is what's going to be used on their paint tube. So they had to get an index card to write down the recipe of their favorite colors that they created. And of course, they had to get a paintbrush. And they also grabbed a baby wipe. The baby wipe was for them to clean their brush with. I didn't want to deal with water, especially since they were mixing such small amounts. But I did notice that when I had another class previously do this, and that's the key. Make sure you always do a test run of a lesson that you're going to be evaluated on. I did have a class use a paper towel, and it just didn't get their paintbrush clean enough. Couldn't think for a second. So the last thing that they already had waiting for them at their seats was a styrofoam tray, and every student got their own styrofoam tray. This one's since dried. But I did want to share with you what colors I gave them. They, of course, had the primary colors, red, yellow, blue, but they also had magenta and turquoise and white. I actually did not give these kids black paint. And I learned that by teaching the previous class, because when the previous class that I did the test run used black paint, their colors all went very, very muddy. So I just eliminated that, and they were to mix secondary colors, tertiary colors, tints on their palette, and then transfer those to their sheet. So they set to work, and they had a blast. They were mixing. Their little palette papers were just as beautiful as can be, and many of them signed them and put them on the drying rack because they wanted to keep them. As they were painting away, I had several, sorry, I keep stepping on a screen. I had several of them share their favorite color recipe. And this was great because it gave an opportunity for the kids to speak out, to share, to engage with one another, to chat with their peers. So we just had this rule that if you mix a color that you really like and you think your friends are going to like, raise your hand so that you can share that color and the color recipe. So we had kids sharing talking about how they felt like scientists, and this was my recipe. And I loved that a lot of the kids started using the word ratio, because then that was great because we talked about how it's like math in that respect. And on their recipe cards, we also were able to bring in the literacy element. So they're writing, and not only are they writing out their recipe magenta, white, and turquoise, but they also had to come up with a unique and creative name. She named this color Pinkie Pie. And this student was really fun because she said, you know, I have a great way for people to remember the ratio of color to put in. Just draw a minus sign if you want less of it and a plus sign if you need to use more. By the end of art class, They were completely stoked. This is about, the majority of them got about this far. I had 2 kids finish, but the majority of them were at this place. And a lot of them asked me today, hey, are we going to go back and finish the sheet? And I had really thought hard about this because I thought it would be a beautiful work of art and we could probably do something more with it once it's filled in. But knowing that that took 1 art class, I could totally see this taking at least 2 or 3 more. And I don't want to use that much art time to keep repeating the same experience. So here's my plan. I will be saving these sheets. They came in handy for this lesson, for this project, and it came in really handy for them to come up with their unique color. But anytime I want to introduce these kids to a new medium, color pencil, watercolor, oil pastel, marker, I'm going to give them back these sheets. That way they can explore blending color or even a regular pencil and explore value. So this sheet becomes the 100 color challenge, not just for one medium, but for several different media. And I think that would be so awesome for them to later cut out, put in their sketchbooks, or even use as a beautiful work of art, perhaps for some collage project. Anyway, now that at the end of the lesson, I had planned to have them bust these sheets out again and just fill it out again, thinking of the changes that they made from their top answers. We didn't have time. We were so engaged in our lesson that I just thought, you know what, them mixing color and enjoying this experience is more important than stopping everything and having them do their post assessment. So we'll definitely be following up with this and just chatting about what we learned. But I wanted to share this lesson with you because, like I said, it brought in so many different elements, brought in the pre-assessment, the post-assessment. I was able to tick a lot of boxes. Don't know what my score is yet, so I will keep you posted. But it was a really fun lesson that I definitely will be doing it again. I definitely plan to do it again. So just wanted to share it with y'all. And if you guys have done the 100 color challenge in your room, I would love to hear about your experience with it. Thank you so much for letting me share. Bye, guys.